So in this past couple of days, we have been posting leveling builds for the endgame. Now we can start properly post the endgame, real endgame builds that are going to be having the meta skills, the most powerful things that you are going to use to increase your DPS to the maximum level. And then we're also going to be discussing about the weapons, the best weapons for your builds, and that's of course going to be Artian weapons. We're also going to be discussing about the things that work as intended and the things that do not work as intended, because there's many things like that they don't work, and there's many niche things, and then there's many things that people don't like. So we're going to try to cover all of that as much as we can possibly do. But first and foremost, let's actually go through the gear, and then we'll talk about the weapons, and then after we talk about the weapons, we're going to talk about the decos that we're using. We are going to be needing the Gore Helm beta. This is going to give us coalescence. We'll talk about that of coalescence in a little while. It's a very interesting skill that people are still arguing about. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can about coalescence. And then we have the Arc Vulcan Mail. This is purely and mainly to increase our weakness exploit, the G Arc Veilvan races and the Arc Vulcan Coil. All of these guys is just to maximize our weakness exploit to level 5 in that, and then we're going to have the Gore Grips in here. That is going to give us antivirus, which is it's something that is going to be very important for our build, but it's also going to give us the set bonus of the Black Eclipse that we'll talk about in a little while as well. And then we're using the Chain Talisman, which is going to give us 2 levels into Burst. This is a weapon that naturally attacks like a maniac, and the playstyle that I like to adopt for this weapon. This skill should always be active. That's the gear that we have. Now, let's talk about the weapons and forging Artian weapons, because this is kind of interesting. There is a whole bunch of amazing weapons that you are going to have as a choice in here. The very first thing, the very first filter that you have to go through if you want to decide that you want to be using an elemental weapon from this place right here, is if they actually have something interesting. What are the stats that the weapon has? Is the element high enough for me to consider using the weapon or not? If you don't have like a proper Artian weapon, like some of the best weapons, like always, is going to be, for example, the Rathalos. As you can see, this has a very good amount of elemental damage. It has 250, which is amazing. It also has decent amount of white sharpness, but it also has a level 3 of critical boost. That is going to be the main deterrence. That is going to be the driving engine on whether you decide to use that or not. Because, for example, critical elements. Critical elements is not that it's bugged right now. A lot of people are saying that it's bugged. It's not bugged. It's just that the returns that you're getting from critical elements are not that much compared to different skills. Like, for example, we are going to have coalescence that, depending on the weapon, can reach up to 30% damage. These guys right here have like 2 or 3% damage, and if that's the case, then you might as well just run with critical boost, that you're sure that you're going to get 30% damage instead of the 2 or 3% damage that you're getting from critical elements. So anything that has critical elements, at the time, at least until they buff it a little bit, you should be avoiding like hell. This one has 2. For example, it has both punishing draw and critical draw. We have many more ways to increase our critical damage than using the drawing attacks, and it also has like the punishing draw. Then again, this is a weapon that you're not going to be drawing it. You actually have to be sheathing your weapons for these guys to be active. You want to have skills that you can control. And then you have God, for example. I do not like this because the overall playstyle that you should be adopting with a SNES is trying to master the perfect guards, and the perfect guards are going to nullify at all times the god in here. So that's what you should be striving, and as a matter of fact, the perfect guards are always going to be giving you the offensive guard, which is a huge, and I mean a huge amount of DPS. The perfect guard, the offensive guard, is going to be increasing your attack by 15% while active, and you should be using your offensive guard as much as possible. This is going to allow you to be on the offensive and at the defensive at the same time. It's also going to trigger a whole bunch of counter attacks, so that's actually kind of amazing. As a roundup, as a general rule of thumb, you should be using things that have offensive guard, things that have, for example, the critical The critical status is good. This one has critical draw, so I don't like it that much. Critical status is very, very good. So for example, the Rathian 3, this has critical status. Critical status is working as intended. I've actually gotten like a proc for paralysis like 4 or 5 times on a single hunt because of this thing. So this is very, very useful. So anything that has critical status, everything that has critical boost, anything that has guard boost, it's actually kind of amazing. This is one of my favorite choices. However, Artian weapons are always going to be best, provided that you actually build them properly and that you don't get crappy increases for reinforcements like I do in here. So what do you want to have for your increases? Since we're building for coalescence that we're going to talk about in a little while, and we're going to be increasing mostly our elemental damage, and this is a build that we're going to be using generally to use as a something that is weakness to the specific element that we have in here. So as you can see, I have built several things that I'm planning to improve. Like for example, we already have ice in here, we already have fire in here, we already have thunder in here. I'm using water for the Sansi Kathava because I haven't managed to get something cool out of water. But you can see that this is one of my favorite weapons. It has offensive guard level 3, it has a decent amount of white sharpness, but the problem is that its water element, it's very low if you compare it to, for example, this one that has a base of 280. Remember that that is going to be increased every time that once you reinforce the weapon. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can showcase you that right now. I am going to burn a weapon. I am going to see if I have somewhat of materials in here to improve. Well, not necessarily, but for the sake of science, let's actually just burn 3 of these guys. See if we actually can get something good out of this. And what do you know? We got crappy stuff as well. We got in here attack boost, affinity boost, and attack boost. That is not what you want to be having with this thing. What you want to have ideally is something that is going to increase your white sharpness, because as you can see, these weapons have just the tiniest amount of white sharpness. So you want to have at least 1 of them, which is going to be a huge increase. And then being a little bit greedy in here, but preferably 3 boosts on elemental. The affinity, any affinity, we don't actually need that thing because we're going to have 100% of affinity all the time because of the build on itself. So that is essentially what you want to be building with your Artian weapons for the SNES, something that is going to increase your element. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to actually destroy this thing because I know that I'm not going to be using this, so I need to start forging something different because I know that this is not going to be good for me. Nevertheless, the elements that it has, it's very, very high, and you can increase that much more. There's a couple of decorations that I don't have here with me, but ideally, with a properly built weapon, this is what you would have with the regular base weapons, alright? This is using regular base weapons. This is the first build that I'm going to have for you. You're going to have 3 levels of handicraft, depending on how is it, what is it that you have. But this is also going to be subject to a little bit of a change, because in here you will notice that I have a stream handicraft jewel for my water weapon. So it gives me 3 levels into stream and then 1 level into handicraft, and then I can use the second slot for a handicraft jewel that is going to give me 3 levels into the handicraft. Very, very useful because this weapon doesn't really have that much of white raw. And then we can slot a critical jewel in here. And also have in mind that the only reason that I'm not using an offensive guard upon this weapon, it's because the weapon already has the offensive guard. If I, for example, were to be using something different, like for example, the Corona in here, you will see that we still have the offensive guard, we still have the critical boost in here, we still have the fire attack, we no longer have the handicraft in here because this already has a decent amount of white sharpness. So that's the things that you want to be managing in here. In here, I just have the Guardian Jewel for the offensive guard, and then I used the rest off to increase my fire attack. That is the general rule of thumb. Those are the skills that you want to be prioritizing on your weapon: critical boost, offensive guard, and the elemental attack that you want to use with that weapon. Now, if we were actually to be using something like a weapon that we crafted, an Artian weapon, then what you're going to be slotting is going to be an offensive guard, the elemental damage type that you have for that weapon. So for example, you will see that this one reaches nearly 400, and that is even without even having like the upgraded stuff that we actually need from the weapon that we burned. We still have nearly 400, and we didn't actually manage to get element in here. Imagining as well that we actually got more sharpness out of this weapon, then that's why you are not going to be using any handicraft in here. So if you have a proper weapon, this is ideally how your build is going to be looking whenever you're using an Artian weapon. The critical boost, you will notice that it's just one level in here, but don't worry about that. You can slot a level 3. But you shouldn't really worry about that either with the rest of the weapons, because the critical boost between the levels of 1 and 3, it's just going to be a difference of 6%. So level 1 is going to have 28%, and level 3 is going to have 34%. So we're just going to round that up as a critical boost. It doesn't matter, it's always going to be like extra 30% damage, if that makes sense to you. So talking about the decorations that we are going to have on our weapon, this is always going to be the same. You should have 3 chain jewels. I don't have 3 chain jewels, that's why I don't have a level 5 of burst, but I'm still getting on that. I do not want to use the exploit for Decos, because that takes away from the fun. I have been getting my stuff just by regularly playing the game. So 3 chain jewels for a level 5 of burst, and then the physique. This is where you can start to be creative on the physique. This is not going to be like a mandatory thing per se, purely because this is not going to have maximum might. It's nice to have stamina at all times, but here you can have like divine protection, or you can have more healing with your flask uses, or you can have defense. You can have 5 levels into defense in here, which is very, very powerful. So this is going to be up to your personal preference, but just have in mind that you do have that place to work in here. And then we're going to have a Phoenix Jewel, which is paired up with our stuff that we got from the Gold Magala thing. This is going to increase our coalescence. Now we're going to talk about coalescence and the same jewels as well, because this is going to give you antivirus, and we're going to talk about these 3 aspects in here together so that you understand why are we doing this and why are we getting so much increase from this, aside from all of the increases that we already have from our weapons. So essentially, we have the Gore Magala Black Eclipse in that. And so what that does is that it inflicts enemies whenever you're fighting a large monster. Meaning that every time that you're fighting anything, you always have Frenzy. Frenzy, what it does is that you receive double damage, but if you heal the Frenzy, you get 15% more affinity, granted affinity, for about 1 minute. If we use the antivirus, which is going to make it easier for us to heal from the Frenzy, that is going to take away that Frenzy from us that much faster, giving us that 15% more affinity every time that we heal from it. Meaning that 90% of the fight, we are also always going to have free 15% affinity. But not only that, the antivirus level 3, what that is going to do is that it's going to increase the recovery rate after having the Frenzy, but whenever you are cured from the Frenzy, you are going to have 15% affinity. This is bugged. It's actually just giving you 10%. So ideally, that's 90% of the time that you're going to have plus 25% affinity, which is better than the expert. That is why we have so much affinity in here. And then this is also every time that we cure from the Frenzy. After that minute has passed, we're going to get somewhat of a coalescence for a little while that is going to increase our elemental damage, our elemental defense, and our elemental build up, and our status element build up. And this is a little bit of a discussion in here. A lot of people are claiming this, a lot of people are claiming that, and the link in the video description, I am going to have my source as to where am I getting this information. So as you can see, the elemental damage multiplier for coalescence depends on the weapon that you're using. For faster weapons, like the Sony Shield, like the Dual Blades, like the Longsword, like the Kinseclave, for faster weapons, it's going to be half of what for heavier weapons is going to be. So a level 1 of Coalescence with the Sword and Shield and those weapons is going to be 5% increase in elemental damage. A level 2 is going to be 10% increase in elemental damage. A level 3 is going to be 15% increase in elemental damage. Whereas on a Greatsword, a level 1 is going to be 10%, a level 2 is going to be 20%, and a level 3 is going to be 30%. Those are my values that I'm using for this video, and I'm guessing that since we are already using the antivirus as a different something to increase our affinity, might as well just use that one more level into Coalescence to get 10% more damage whenever we heal from the Frenzy, which, like I said, we're always going to be healing from the Frenzy, so that's 10% more free damage. So those are the things that you want to be doing to change stuff around with your weapons. Remember that you should always be using RTN weapons. I already showcased which skills should you be using with your RTN weapons, but if you're using monster weapons, which skills are you going to be using with the monster weapons and what monster weapons are good. Have in mind that your strive should always be trying to get those RTN weapons with the elements and the stuff that I showed you, because those are going to be the most powerful things in the game. I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a hunt with a monster weapon that is going to showcase you the potential of the build. Having this as a monster weapon, have in mind that you can get even faster times if you actually manage to get a proper RTN weapon. If you like the content, like I never super appreciate it, not only there you go to just a beautiful person, you are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord, have a beautiful day, goodbye.